as an introduction, we're here to discuss fashion and sustainability. And I wanted to share two figures with you that we've seen recently. Of course, we see that return rates are high. In Germany, for the last 2 years, they remain very high in the fashion industry, around 50% of return rates. But in France, in some other European markets like France and the UK, we have seen a huge jump by plus 10, plus 15 points over the last 2 years in the fashion industry. So it's a huge concern for many retailers. And another figure that in France we have the anti-waste law, which means that fashion retailers cannot destroy goods anymore, so they have to reuse and recycle non-food products. And 1 year after the beginning of this legislation in France, we've measured in Man Retail in our survey that an average of 10% of a season's collection remains unsold at the end of a season. It's actually the same rate for Shein, the Chinese fast fashion retailer. And for a brand like Fagwo, it's 15% of unsold product at the end of a cycle. So it was just a quick introduction and to introduce Richard and Rebound company. Can you tell us a bit more about Rebound?
Yeah, of course. So Rebound is a returns management provider. So on the one hand, we have our advanced technologies. On the other hand, we have our logistics network. And together that enables us to offer end-to-end return solutions on a global scale. We call ourselves a omni-channel returns provider, which means we are not only focusing on consumer returns, but we are also looking after business-to-business returns. So, for example, from retail locations, and we're trying to combine that into one proposition. So we are connected to many first-mile carriers worldwide to make sure all consumers have a localized experience, focusing on consumer experience, focusing on choice, but also taking into account considerations that the specific retailers may have around speed and costs and for example, customer environmental impact, as an example. So we have our own hub structure. That means that we are equipped with 30 plus hubs worldwide in many European countries, but also in key markets like UK, US, Canada, Australia. We have our own hubs equipped, or hubs we manage basically, but equipped with our own technology to make sure we make smart decisions along the return chain.
Okay, and Rebound is part of the British company Reconomy. What are the other bricks of the Reconomy offer, just to give us a big picture of the company?
Yeah, so if you look at this, so the Reconomy company is built into 3 main verticals. So we have the recycling vertical on the left side, focusing on waste management, resource management, all those kind of activities. We have the comply vertical, which our sister companies, for example, RRG and Valpak, are part of. They are very active also in this whole EPR, extended producer responsibility topic, and preparing us for the future. And we have the reuse division, where Rebound is part of, together with advanced supply chain, offering the actual return solutions and fulfillment solutions and on an end-to-end scale.
Okay. We've seen that returns are both profitability and sustainability issue in the fashion industry. And recently, it was interesting to see some shift from retailers. Like in 2022, H&M and Zara started charging online returns to encourage people making in-store returns and create traffic in store. And even last month, in April 23, even Amazon in the US has been testing a new approach for your returns in the US, because they actually charge $1 when returns are made via UPS on condition that an Amazon store is located nearby, like Whole Foods or Kohl's, because they have a partnership with a Kohl's department store for returns. Do you think, Richard, that more and more retailers will introduce return charges?
So, yes, I think so. So you see it happening already. The bigger retailers, like you described, are going to consider charging for returns. I think this is a consideration basically for all retailers at the moment. Some are doing it, some are not doing it. Some are anticipating of doing it. What you also see is you see younger brands that are immediately starting with paid returns, so they don't have to move from free returns to paid returns, which obviously is a big thing for the customer experience side of things. But if you think about it, and if you relate it to what we do at Rebound, so if you start doing paid returns, you also need to make sure it's on the front side, what the consumer can see, it works well. So integrating payment integrations, for example, is what we do. But then it's also the question about, okay, in terms of customer experience, what do you prefer? Letting your consumer pay for a return, or you deduct it from the refund, which might be a more friendlier way of doing it. But this is also very much of a... Okay. But this is also very much up to the individual retailer to see basically what's the best approach here. So we are trying to do a lot of things also to integrate the paid returns options also, for example, with exchange functionalities. And this is where it becomes complex, right? Because if you start to do paid returns and you want to exchange products in a portal, for example, then you're talking about paying for the outbound potentially, paying for return, and you want to have this in a super way integrated so that you're not only thinking about the option of offering paid returns or not, but you're actually making sure the tech and the proposition you offer to your consumers is working well.
Okay. So we are here to discuss the specific topic of extended producers' responsibility in the fashion industry. So I have a question for you guys, because it's always good to know who we are talking to, so that we can meet your expectation. Could you just raise your hands? How many of you are retailers or online retailers? Okay, a lot of retailers. Good. And how many of you are curious about extended producers' responsibility? Yeah. And okay. And how many of you see this as an emergency for their business? Oh, a few hands. Okay. So, Richard, what does your extended producer's responsibility? What does it mean for a fashion retailer concretely?
So, extended producer responsibility, it's not new, right? So it's existing across many industries already, and it's going to be introduced for textiles. It basically, in high level, means that a producer is going to be responsible from the initial design stage of a product all the way up to the end of life stage of a product. So including the collection and the waste management and the resource management. So that means in an EPR scheme, it means that being responsible basically means that you're responsible for all the costs associated with that. And when you are responsible for the costs associated with something, that should encourage behavioral change. So one important part of an EPR strategy is that there is the right incentives for producers to start doing the right things to basically create this circular ecosystem.
Okay. And what would you say is the objective of the European Union regarding the fashion industry through this EPR?
Yeah, so obviously it was up to the industry to actually develop something, but it didn't go fast enough, right? In the textile industry to build this circular system, a lot of products are going into landfill, a lot of products are going into incineration. So now there is this big strategy into 2030, which has a vision, right? And the vision is here on the screen. The vision basically means textiles need to be long-lived, they need to be recyclable, producers need to be responsible along the full value chain, and we're actually going to make sure that landfill and incineration is reduced to the minimum. So this strategy has resulted in some key actions, and one of these key actions is the extended producer responsibility. So there's more to this. There's, for not going too much into detail on the other topics, but the eco-design of products. So what materials are you using in your products is very relevant. The digital product passport that's going to exist is very relevant. And these are like 6-7 items, key actions, among which EPR has been developed to realize that strategy.
Okay. The European Commission set up the framework principle of this EPR for fashion last year in 2022, if I'm right. Where are we now in terms of adoption on a country basis? Because it doesn't seem to be a fast adoption.
No, so as part of this strategy in 2025, all the individual member states of the EPR need to implement EPR. That's an obligation, so it will happen. So harmonization is a big theme, of course, throughout the European Union to do it in a harmonized way. But at the same time, what we see is there's lots of freedom for the individual countries to implement it in a way that they see fit based on the characteristics of the market. So the first countries that are actually going live, which is in 24, are Italy and the Netherlands. So they're in a far stage of development of how this will look like in the specific countries. And this is also where our sister companies, RLG and Valpak, play a big role in terms of to establish that and to build solutions for that.
Okay. So EPR is going to be a highly strategic topic for retailers. Regarding fashion, retailers in particular, what does it mean for their industry, specifically in terms of action to implement?
Yeah, so let me say there is a lot of unknowns, right? So there's fees to be paid, which we don't know how high this will be. There is also which product categories are going to be impacted. It's not always clear, is shoes included? So there's lots of elements to this. Also the incentives for producers, what are going to be the incentives? How is it going to be resulting, for example, in reduced fees? Mm-hmm. This is all things are in negotiation. So for Italy and Netherlands, we have a good view on the conversations that are going on. All the other markets still need to come across, and we'll have to see how it's going to be implemented. So there's three main things if you think about impact for the industry, which is this objective to create this economy for basically collection, sorting, redistributing, and in the end of life, to create this system. So that's an individual producer responsibility according to the theory, basically. The second point is the use of eco-design, basically. So making sure your products are built up in a way that you can actually recycle them, that you can actually reuse them, because in the end you will be incentivized on those type of elements. And the third part is that in these EPR schemes, there will have to be, in the end, the producers are going to pay for the cost of the end of life stage, which basically means that those fees will be used to invest in the whole system. So they will be invested to scale up recycling, scale up repairing, and build the whole infrastructure around it, basically, to go and work towards the end goal in 2030.
So in the Netherlands, which categories will be? It's an additional question.
That's good. That's fine.
Which categories will be included? It's not only fashion. Is it also home textile, for instance?
So I'm not sure. I think in the Netherlands it's very very broad and very clear already. So there's t-shirts, there involve shoes, everything that's fashion or in the broadest sense of speaking will be included. I think maybe one interesting thing to tell about this. So although we don't know much about the fees and also the impact, and that will be a very critical element, of course, to this. What we do know is that there's a Dutch authority did an investigation based on how much kilos of textiles are brought into the market. At the same time, what is going to be the costs for collecting, sorting, and actually building the infrastructure for to achieve the objectives of the EPR. And that resulted in 56 euro cents per kilo. That will be the cost. That is. I'm not saying here that will be the cost for producers, but that is giving you a little bit of an outlook of potentially how far this could go. And this is an investigation done in the Netherlands.
Interesting. Okay. Can you break that down for us, Richard? What are the main obligations that fashion producers need to follow for EPR?
Yes, so there's a few very tangible requirements for producers. First of all, you need to report how much textiles you bring onto the market, and that's for individual EU member states. That's relatively simple, but the whole idea is, of course, that producers want to be incentivized to actually do something different and therefore pay less. So you will want to be incentivized for using the right materials. You want to be incentivized for example, offering like consumers to take back goods and start repairing them, start recycling them, and having the data on that to actually support that. And therefore the expectation is that those kind of things that individual producers can start doing, that will reduce in lower cost, which is the type of incentivization which is actually required to get something happening. It's an individual obligation to set up an adequate nationwide collection network. So it will be very tough for a lot of producers to do on a nationwide collection network. So it means basically that in an individual country you need to be able to collect, sort, split and have the data, which is obviously a theoretical obligation, but that's how it's that's how it's written down. A critical point is you need to provide information to consumers. This is you need to make sure that consumers know what to do with their end-of-life products, which can be, okay, please send it back to us. We will do this and that with it. Can also mean, please bring it to a charity, please bring it to a second. But at least you need to make sure you inform, and based on the information and based on the flows that are happening, that you produce data around this. Last point is the eco-design. I mentioned a few times, and that's really related to the initial stage of product design, where you use the right materials, enabling recycling, enabling repairing and reuse.
If you have questions, do that. Yeah, I will. Let me. 1 second, lady. Up. No. Thank you. Est-ce que ça marche?
Hi, thanks very much, Federica from PVH. I'm here with my colleague Monica. So EPR is not new. It already exists all over Europe for packaging, right? And it's a mess, frankly. There's 31 different systems. It's not harmonized. So I'm, very interesting that you mentioned that this one should be harmonized across Europe, but I can probably already predict, and you as well, that will be very challenging. Also, it's a political issue. But my question is, what can parties like yourself or other companies do to support fashion brands to try and resolve this very, very challenging issue? And I don't know, focus on the data collection, etc. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So good question, and I agree with your concerns. I think these concerns are very valid, and the risk of that happening, what happens with packaging basically is the same risk apply here, right? It's all depending on the execution, not necessarily how it's written in the theory. So where do returns come in, right? So one of the obligations is setting up an adequate nationwide collection network. If you look at what Rebound is doing, our returns proposition is built on local return receipts. So that means if you return either a consumer or a business, a retail store is returning in Italy as an example, and you're a retailer in the UK, it comes down in a hub in Italy. We are equipped in our hubs with our technology to all kinds of smart sorting activities. So we can sort on purchase date, we can sort on value, but we can also do activities like splitting grade A, B, C. We can see what is damaged. And we work together with a lot of parties, like repair partners, reuse partners, recycling partners, charity partners. So we are in these individual countries, we are able to receive the goods, do what we need to do, and then distribute it to the right channels. That is very relevant, for example, if you look at take-back schemes. If you want to offer to your consumers, say, okay, end-of-life products, please promote that you send it back to us. There's obviously a cost associated to this, but then we receive it and we bring it to the right channels. And we are helping with the data behind that. Because obviously when returns, or in this case end-of-life products, which is essentially the same, when they flow through our network, we have all the data. And we are able to support the data in a way which is then relevant and applicable to the regulation, because we work together with our sister company Valpak, who is very much equipped to know how does the data need to be delivered. So that is the typical way of thinking how Rebound can actually connect to this. Then let's see. One other thing is that obviously we have a lot of front ends. So we have consumer portals, we have retail portals, and this is a typical place where you would like to inform your customers also about end of life stage. So you can inform about your return policy, you can do everything in terms of consumer experience, but you can also start thinking about, okay, when consumers return, you can also inform them about the end of life stage. And by offering a sort of a take back portal, which we actually already have for other industries, that also means that you can actually engage with your consumer once more. So it's a cost, yes, but it will be supported by regulation. We want to build this circular ecosystem, and it's another engaged moment, which you can also use in your advantage as a producer, because you can connect it to potential new sales. You can connect it to marketing, etc. So our front end portals are a very good way of visualizing and giving information to consumers.
Okay. Could you share with us? Do you have example of retailers that are particularly advanced on this topic in the fashion sector?
Yeah, I think this is also a bit of a problem, right? So I think there is definitely companies that are doing stuff. That is typically the fashion retailers in this case that are intrinsically motivated to do something. There's a couple of examples in the market of fashion retailers that offer repair services, do it free of charge, that really do something. But we need real incentives to get the big bunch of the producers actually changing their behavior. So I think the good answer here is that there is not enough happening at the moment, which is why we need the regulation, and the extent of how good the regulation will be and how well it will be applied will also realize in whether or not we are going to make this as an industry.
Okay. In terms of, because there are some unclear aspects in this EPR project and legislation. What about a multi-brand retailer or a marketplace that sells fashion produced by other companies, by manufacturers? Who will be responsible for the end of life of the product? Is it what is the split between the retailer and the manufacturer?
So everybody that is selling to a consumer directly is responsible. So if you're selling on a platform, so you're not selling yourself, you're selling on a marketplace, for example, that means you're still responsible. It could be, that's still not entirely clear, that the marketplace will get an obligation to validate if a seller on the marketplace is actually adhering to the regulation. But this is not something that is confirmed.
Okay. And what about charities? Because if I give my old fashion items to Oxfam or Emmaüs in France, how does the retailer, how can he know that I gave my fashion items to a charity? How can it be integrated in a EPR global vision and process?
Yeah, so if you look at where Rebound comes in, then obviously we could bring it into our network, and then we can route it to charity, and then we would have the data to support it. But if consumers bring it directly to charity, then it's obviously a challenge. You need to, if the only way you're gonna get, let's say, incentivized for something or gonna get the result out of it, if you can prove that you did something. So you need to find a way then, potentially another way of getting the data, which these things are not necessarily very clear at the moment.
Okay. You told us earlier that Rebound was a specialist of return management. How are returns and EPR connected? What?
So I think that's mainly comes into the points I mentioned before, right? So the connection on the information provision in the portals, making sure we are connected to all kinds of channels where products can be directed, and also the points made here, like we have this network. So the formal obligation to set up a nationwide network is something we can immediately help with. We have the network already. We use it for returns, but we could also use it for end of life products.
Okay. Do we have other questions from you guys? Do you? Is there someone in the room who is meeting the requirement? Yeah.
It is now 6:35. Please prepare for your next one-to-one meeting on the stand of the sponsor in the meeting.
We are from Grover, and I just have a couple of questions about how this really relates to the producers of it. does that mean that the manufacturer will also, like, we talk a lot about blockchain, that they give that information of the asset they produce as an NFT or in the blockchain, that then the consumer, if he then really is taught about how the system works and he really takes it back, that he can prove it by owning that via the blockchain, that it's really that article he bought, and therefore also has that economical print attached to it, or how is there the connection with Rebound in a way directly to the producer, to the manufacturer?
So
I don't know.
So it's a very detailed question. I'm not sure I can answer all of it, but so Rebound is not connected to that part. So one of the suggestions we will definitely make is, because that's definitely part of this all, is the producers need to talk to the manufacturers, and the digital product passport, which is something that's going to very much clarify what is the materials that something is made of for consumer information, but also for recycling and all the other activities that can be done, are very relevant to this. But this is really for the producer to take up with the manufacturer side, which is not, this is not a part that Rebound will play a role in.
Okay. Do you have a final words of advices for retailers and people attending?
Yeah, I think this is. So we've heard also from the audience, right? There's other industries where this is applicable. There's mixed results of that. The risk is also here that there will be mixed results. It will all depend on how the individual countries will actually implement it, how retailers are going to be incentivized to do it. But it definitely, it's a good idea to get ahead of it. It's already coming. It's coming 1st of Jan 24 Netherlands and Italy. It will come at latest in 25 at all the individual member states. On a lot of elements, we as Rebound can help out, but this is not a conversation of 5 minutes, right? So this is something that needs preparation, and we'll have to develop over time, depending on how the regulation develops, how the individual member states are going to deal with it. So that's something that's definitely important, also to take it seriously by the industry. And then it maybe comes a bit to your question as well. So speak to your manufacturers and 3PLs, because they are a key element here. So your manufacturers will play a big role at the initial design phase, but also your 3PLs that you might use can play a big role in how can they facilitate, how can they help? Because in the end, this is a whole chain from start to finish. And as Rebound, we can play a big role, but we cannot play an end-to-end role in the EPR scheme, right? So this is something that's wider than that. And the last thing, which is, it's a bit of a logical one, right? So definitely talk to us to see how we can help already. What can we do to support you in preparation for this topic, and how can we connect this to returns?
Okay. Do you have a journalist like announcement, as I told you on the phone yesterday? No, I'm kidding. But do you have regarding the Rebound strategy and the key priorities for you in the coming months? Do you have something in mind in terms of transformation of your offer, or something new you would like to share with us? Yeah,
I think then we go a bit away from the EPR topic, right? So I've told you a little bit about the returns proposition in the beginning. So we are doing advanced returns processing, right? So that means we are doing consumer initiation, business initiation. It flows through a network. We can do smart things early stage in the process to enable different types of routing of items to different end destinations by our technology. But we also do things like grading. We do things like we have repair partners, recycling partners. And in the end, the next step for us is to start doing, how we call it, refulfillment, reverse to forward, making sure that where returns are processed, they are reworked, so they are ready to go back in stock. Why would we not help to actually start bringing it back into the market? So this is one of the developments we are currently working on. This is not an active capability. This is something we are at the moment working on, and we expect towards the end of this year to roll out this capability for some of our clients. And this is definitely how we see the returns developing.
So, closing the loop of the return
closing
cycle.
The loop, yes.
Great. Do we have other questions or remarks, or no? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Right. Thank you.
Have a good conference.